Motion by Mr. McCarthy, second by Mr. Penny. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to that motion to approve? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Number 8 are appointments. Per county board rules, the board chairman appointments require a 30-day layover unless there is a suspension of rule. Tonight we have the River Bluff Board of Directors. Annual compensation is none. We have several. So it's Jim Knutson, it's a new appointment. Teresa Gabelli, which is a new appointment. Trent Brass, which is a new appointment. Bob Neiman, new appointment. Jay Ferraro, new appointment. Steve Schultz, a new appointment. Frank Perricone, new appointment. Bernice Marinelli, it's a new appointment. And John Butita, a new appointment. Those will be laid over. Next, we have reports of standing committees. The first committee is the Finance Committee. Mr. Butita.
Okay, tonight, Mr. Chairman, we have 9 items to bring before the board from the Finance Committee. The first item is a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 budget policy, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Thompson. Discussion, Mr. Butita?
Would if Marlena wanted to comment on this?
Ms. Dockin, if you can come forward.
Okay, this was brought to you because in July of '22, the board amended the budget to add indirect costs to the budget policy. We've since then had a request from a couple departments that wanted to be able to do a waiver in the event they applied for a grant that didn't allow them to take indirect cost. So that's what this is mostly about, this particular ordinance. So one thing that we did is we worked with finance to create another sheet so that when somebody applies for a grant and is asking the board for approval, they'll not only be bringing the executive summary, but they'll also be bringing the resolution and a new sheet that gives more information about the grant.
Very good. Is there any board member discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to the motion to approve this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay, the next item is a resolution to establish a public safety sales tax policy, and I so move.
By Mr. Butita. Is there a second by Mr. Lindmark? Discussion, Mr. Butita?
Back to Marlena, please.
Ms. Dockin.
And this one is the public safety sales tax, public safety sales tax policy. It was my understanding that we did not have a public safety sales tax policy, so this is to implement one for something that was implemented approximately 20 years ago. We've not had a policy and we've needed one. So this, after much research, this follows what the original resolution promised, which was the 15 action steps and the 3-part plan, and it follows what was promised to the citizens of Winnebago County.
Very good, thank you. Board member discussion on item number 3. Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to this motion to approve this resolution? Very good, please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay, next we're going to move to item number 5, which is a resolution for the purchase of a truck for the Facilities Department, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by, do we have a second for this? Mr. Arena seconds that motion. Mr. Butita.
All right, this is a resolution to spend $59,000 for a truck that was originally authorized to be purchased in 2021. The vehicle was never delivered, so this is just a reauthorization of that request.
Very good. Any other board member discussion on item number 5? All right, hearing no discussion, is there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay, next I'd like to take item number 4 and number 6 together for the purpose of suspending the rules. Both of these came to the Finance Committee mistakenly. They should have gone through operations. So in order to be in order, we'll ask to suspend the rules so we can deal with them this evening.
So you're moving to suspend the rules on number 4 and number 6. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, motion by Mr. Butita to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Mr. Arena seconds. Are there any board members opposed to the suspension of the rules for number 4 and number 6? Hearing none, please cast the yes for all members present. The rules are suspended, Mr. Butita.
All right, then we'll deal with item number 4, which is a resolution awarding ARP funding for the HVAC CPU replacements, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, seconded by Mr. Arena. Any discussion, Mr. Butita?
No, this is just a approval of an ARP project that has been, the budget was approved. That's all.
Board member discussion, Mr. Arena.
Thank you. I have a question about this is a sole source project, right? So when we have projects that are sole source, are we reaching out in some way to the business community to see who might have alternatives? How do we determine that it's a sole source?
Please.
Thank you, Chairman. In this case, what's a rule?
Thank you. In this case, these are, the system's already in place, and they're just replacing part of it. So that's why it's sole source, because we're already using the same brand in this case. But as far as sole source in general, I know that's what you're asking, we've actually added more language on that in the new purchasing ordinance, which you'll see, in the next few months, where we really explained it even further. We have a form that has to be signed off by the department head, myself, and usually Pat Thompson, that we agree it's the sole source, and that will always be included with your executive summary, so you understand what research was done, if it was conducted, and why it was determined as sole source, and that explanation will also stay in the contract folder. So later on, if someone asks why. But basically, in this case, Alpha Source, it's their units that they're doing. But for other ones, it's always different each time, so.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Any other board member discussion on item number 4? Yes, Ms. Goro.
Is this for one building or several? Where is this for?
It's for several facilities, I think. Let's see. It's for the old and new courthouse, the admin building, juvenile detention center, health department, and the juvenile justice center. So it's several facilities.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Goro. Any other board member discussion or questions on this item? All right, hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to the motion to approve number 4? Mr. Guevara. Any other board members opposed? Very good. Please cast a yes for all present except for Mr. Guevara. Mr. Butita.
All right, next we're going to go with item number 6, which is a resolution awarding the bid for our animal services addition and renovations using our funds. And I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita. Is there a second by Mr. Thompson?
And,
Mr. Butita.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend this resolution, and I'll read that amendment. After Scandrolli Construction Company, we'll strike the next paragraph and replace it with, now therefore be it resolved by the County Board of the County of Winnebago, Illinois, that the County Board Chairman is authorized to execute on behalf of the County of Winnebago contracts which shall be subject to legal review and county purchase orders with Scandrolli Construction Company in the amount of $2,088,388 to Richard L. Johnson Associates in the amount of $43,268, and Huffman Facility Development in the amount of $43,200, for the total amount not to exceed $2,174,856, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita. With this amendment, I believe we already moved for the amendment, but, great. Mr. Thompson, second for the amendment. Very good. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Mr. Butita for continuing to work with me on this. I had raised some concerns in our caucus meeting about how we were structuring this deal, and this resolves my concerns for us to move forward. So I'll be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Any other board member discussion? Mr. Penny.
I do want to go on the record and say I'm proud to see our county utilizing local general contracting services. I'll also be supporting this.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. Any other board member discussion? So what's before you is the amendment for number 6. Okay, are there any board members opposed to this motion for the amendment? Hearing none, please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
All right, next is an ordinance for a budget amendment for the state's attorney's.
Mr. Butita, now you have to pass the resolution as amended. Make a motion.
I apologize. So I move that we approve the resolution awarding the bid for animal services addition and renovations with our funds.
As amended, correct? Yes. Is there a second? Mr. Guevara seconds that motion. Is there any board member discussion? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution as amended? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay. Next then is an ordinance for a budget amendment for the state's attorney's state forfeiture funds, and I so move.
Is that going to be late suspension?
Well, actually, that's to be laid over, correct.
Are you laying that over, Mr. Butita?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number 7 will be laid over.
The next item is the ordinance for approval of the budget amendment for the distribution of opioid lawsuit settlement funds, and I so move on that one.
Are you moving to suspend?
Suspend rules. So we can-
Motion to suspend by Mr. Butita. Is there a second? By Mr. Thompson. Are there any board members opposed to the suspension of rule for number 8? Hearing none, please cast a yes for all members present. The rules are suspended, Mr. Butita.
So I move that we move forward with the ordinance to approve the budget amendment for the distribution of opioid lawsuit settlement funds.
Moved by Mr. Butita for number 8 ordinance. Is there a second? Mr. Hoffman seconds that motion. Is there any board member discussion on number 8? Mr. Salgado.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As at our last finance meeting, I brought it up. It'd be great if either someone, Marlena, or the coroner's office could, give description of how this was came about and the process that it entailed. because my understanding is I was unaware of the 251,000 or change for the opioid settlement, that we got that money, and just didn't know how that process, how we allocated accordingly with the community care volunteer, the coordinator out there, and so forth. So just wanted to see if they could explain that a little bit, so everybody's aware of it, how that process went about. Because like I said, I was not aware that we received that money and that it was allocated that way accordingly. And so just wanted to see that
Very good.
for
Ms.
clarification.
Dockin, would you like to give an explanation?
Sure, the funds came in and a group of us in administration got together and some people from the state's attorney's office to talk about how the funds could be spent. And the original reason that they went into agreement to enter into agreement for the lawsuit was because the opioids crisis was having a significant burden on the taxpayers of Winnebago County, in addition to the deaths that it was causing, the devastation. So what it was determined was it was only $215,000. So to make the biggest impact, we had submitted to departments that had been most significantly impacted. We submitted a application and asked them to send it back. And we only received one application, and that was from the coroner's office. So there was no further discussion because there was not any more applications. We had sent it to the Winnebago County Health Department, the state's attorney's office, 17th Circuit, Winnebago County Jail, public defender's office, and the coroner's office.
And just if I follow up on that, so Ms. Vaughn, is this just part of the lawsuit? Are we going to get additional money? Or is this is it? This is essentially where we're getting $250,000 only?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. This is just for the lawsuit against 3 huge distributors. There will be a couple more coming before you, and then we'll ask to join those lawsuits. But this is just for the 3 that are in the resolution.
Okay. As a follow-up to that, I'd like to recommend in new business or that we sort of have some sort of policy in place for the additional money going through. So we have it, and there's direction, and everybody's understanding where the funds are going to potentially be and what the process is going to be in allocating those funds. So that's would be my recommendation for that.
That's very good. Thank you, Mr. Salgado.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just following up on Mr. Salgado's comments, I want to remind our staff that some months back, we passed a change in our rules that was intended to ensure that committee chairs are notified early on when things are happening that will eventually come through their committee. So at the time this money was received, Mr. Salgado was Chair of Finance. He should have been notified at that time. He shouldn't be finding out now about the money and how it was dispersed. He should have been advised at the time it happened, and we'd like you to be mindful of that and make sure that our committee chairmen are in the loop so that they can filter that information down to us before it comes through to the board in a form that's supposedly ready for passage. I think that would help smooth things out in conducting business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Any further discussion? Mr. Tassoni and then Ms. Fellers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if Ms. Dockin, you could maybe speak to this. As far as the expenses, salaries for the community care coordinator, would it be fair to assume that after the 1 year is up, the requested funds would either be in their coroner's annual budget, or
It
is
would
there
be.
grant monies, or
Right.
is there any thought given to that yet?
Yes, it is a pilot project, and anytime that you do get, this is not really grant funds, but the state of Illinois is sort of treating it like that. So it's always a good opportunity to try pilot projects. If something works, you can try to find funding through grants. If it works really, really good and you can't find funding, you try to find a way to keep it in your budget. But this is something that the coroner thought was desperately needed for this population, and due to the opioid overdoses that they're seeing on a regular basis, this community care coordinator could reach out and help the families that are struggling due to this. In addition, they are getting case management software, which is their IT has approved this case management software and strongly supports it, because what they're working with is quite old, and she gets requests often from our office also for data on opioids and a lot of other things about deaths, and they're just not able to pull it up as easily as they should be able to. So this will do that.
Thank you. Ms. Fellers?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ms. Fellers. Any other questions? Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a quick question, maybe Chief Sagana can answer it. Does the county pay for our Narcan, or is it provided to us? It is provided to us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Any other questions? Are there any board members opposed to this ordinance? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Thank you. The next item is a budget amendment for the year-end adjustments of 2022, and this is to be held over.
Very good. Number 9 will be laid over. Mr. Butita.
The last resolution authorizes a workman's comp settlement claim against the County of Winnebago, entitled Shelley Turner versus Winnebago County, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Webster. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, it's a workman's comp claim in the amount of $40,295.73.
Very good. Board member discussion on this item? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Hearing none, please cast a yes for all members present. Thank you. Mr. Butita.
That'll conclude the report for finance.
Thank you, Mr. Butita. Moving on to the zoning committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Economic Development Committee, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Economic Development Committee has one item tonight. That's a resolution granting authority to the Winnebago County Board Chairman to execute the documents necessary to complete a loan for $100,000 from the revolving loan fund to Rockford Rides LLC, and I move for its adoption.
Moved by Mr. Sweeney. Is there a second this evening? Mr. Neighbors seconds that motion. Mr. Sweeney, any discussion?
Not for me.
For Mr. Sweeney, any other board member discussion? Questions? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Sweeney.
That concludes our report. For the Economic Development Committee, we were going to have a meeting this upcoming Tuesday, but that will be postponed, and at a later date, we'll determine when that will be.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Number D, Operations Administrative Committee, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Public Works, Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, no report, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Public Safety and Judiciary Committee, Mr. Lindmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no report. We will be meeting on the 18th. And if I could just take a moment here to thank Marlena for all of her hard work with the public safety sales tax policy. Very much needed for the citizens of Winnebago County, and thank the board for passing it.
Thank you, Mr. Lindmark. We all feel the same. Thank you, Ms. Dockin. All right, we'll move on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business in front of the board tonight? Okay. New business. Any new business? Mr. Guevara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to introduce a resolution regarding House Bill 4412 for the board's consideration. I'll bring you a copy.
Very good. You're in receipt of, yes. This is a resolution of the County Board of the County of Winnebago, sponsored by John Guevara, the resolution regarding Illinois House Bill 4412, and we will take a look at that resolution for you. and get that to the appropriate committee. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Guevara. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I was alluding a little bit about the opioid, my recommendation is that we set a policy in place or some sort of arrangement on the process when we receive those funds, those additional funds for the opioids. One, I'd like to also consider what committee to look at the casino revenue, that we could set a policy in place, how that money is going to be allocated to what. I know Mr. Tassoni has made commentary about, allocating some funds for the highway department for some of the construction projects. So I'd like to see what committee can look at that for the casino revenues as well. And then the other piece of it is the marijuana sales tax. I'd like to see where that money should go from state statute. If it's wherever we have to designate that, I'd like that spelled out, because we are, from a finance perspective, looking at our reserves right now and potentially making adjustments to it, paying down some debt, et cetera, whatever the case may be. So I'd like to at least have that allocated wherever those funds are needed, directed, because currently we don't have a policy for the casino revenue and the marijuana and also the opioid right now. So hopefully we can get what committee that goes to, have discussions, and obviously make a decision on where those funds should be allocated.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes, I just wanted to say something, and maybe Mr. Rickard as well, but when we approved the current year budget, those revenues by board directive have been funded in the capital improvement plan. But that's not to say that the board can't, disperse those dollars however you see fit, but currently they're being housed in the CIP fund.
So as a follow-up to that, I think we need to designate those properly, because there could be state statute from the marijuana sales tax piece of it. That certain portion has to go to the prosecutor office or state's attorneys, whatever. So we just need to make sure that that's what's happening, instead of designated specifically for CIP or whatever the case may be. So that's my only concern on those things, and I don't have a problem with if we decide as a whole board that those should continue to be in CIP, whatever the case may be. Just want clarification so everybody understands where the money is going, so that later down the road, it adds up to $1 million or whatever, people understand where the money is going to. So that's all.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Mr. Neighbors.
So back when we discussed the new seated arrangement, I asked Mr. Hoffman if it was discussed with him where we would sit, but it was told to us that it would be so each party could sit together. But as I look across the room, the Democrats are divided by the Republicans. So I don't understand how we got this seating arrangement, why we didn't discuss it, and why isn't it split down the middle?
Thank you, Mr. Neighbors. Ms. Goro, you had your hand up. Are you directing that question as a question to somebody?
Yes.
Who you directing it to?
To whoever decided the seating arrangement.
Okay. Mr. Arena? Please.
When this was thank you, Mr. Chairman. When this was discussed at the last meeting, my comment was I just wanted the Republicans to sit together. Was all I said about it. I didn't envision rearranging the room, but I guess we could look into that. I'm not sure what would be involved in that.
So what was the purpose for the Republicans to sit together?
I just thought with new members, it'd be easier for us to communicate among each other what was going on, help them if they had questions.
So what was the purpose for dividing the Democrats?
Well, this is just, there's 12 seats in this section and there's 12 of us. So it was just.
So long as the Republicans benefit from where they want to see, that's all that matters.
Well, that was my objective as the Republican caucus chair, yes.
I mean, because in 2012, when I sat on this board, I enjoyed sitting next to Steve Schultz, because I envisioned him as a good mentor when I was on the county board. And now I see the Republicans want total seclusion and division from the Democrats. You know, I'm all welcome for bipartisanship, and I never looked at it as a Democratic Republican situation. I looked at it as a county as a whole. But the way I see it now is the Republicans only want division from the Democrats and not the county as a whole. And so now, if y'all want to play that game, I can play that game too. I never looked at it like that.
Well, I understand your concern, and like I said, the decision for this first move was just functional, but why don't you and I sit down, have a cup of coffee, and we'll talk about it, and it can get worked out. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rita. Ms. Goro, you had your hand up, I believe.
Yeah, now I gotta remember why. One of the questions I have is, we have not had, especially now that we have new board members, we have not had any updates on what we are doing with the casino money. How are we coming with the trustee program? How are we coming with the land bank? There's a lot of what's happening out there that not only do we as the beginning of the new year need to be caught up on what's happening with all these outside things, but so do our new members have to become aware of them and how we handle them and where everything goes. So really would appreciate some type of information, perhaps the next meeting or the meeting after.
There's several presentations that are being set up for the trustee, the land bank, and just everything you just talked about.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Goro. Mr. Butita, oh, Mr. Guevara, you had your hand up. No, Mr. Butita.
Okay, thank you. So in light of the recent tragedy, it happened a couple Mondays ago on the NFL Monday Night Football, where the gentleman had the heart attack on the field. So he was miraculously saved by CPR and the use of AEDs. So I think it would be a good time for the administration to look at the familiarization of employees with CPR. If we provide training, reinforce that training. I happened to notice walking through the halls the other day, we do have AEDs. I don't have any idea how they work. I guess I'd like to know. So if that training's available, I think we should make that available to all employees. So if that's something that we've done in the past, maybe we can reinforce it now at this point in time.
Thank you. Mr.
I think,
Thompson.
I'll double check into this, but I think through our wellness program, there is some CPR training offered, made available to employees, but I think it's a good point and something to follow up on. And I see through county facilities now that we have new defibrillators installed on various floors throughout county facilities. And my question to the HR director the other day was, that's good, but how do you use these things? And so, yeah, I think it's a good point.
So on behalf of all us old guys, make sure all the young guys know how to use them.
I think Danielle has been trained in it recently, so, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a first responder, I'd like to make sure everybody knows that almost all AED defibrillators have an enunciation to them. So as soon as you open them up, it's going to start talking to you. Remove the shirt, place a pad there, place a pad there. It will talk you through it. And I want everybody to know that. Don't be afraid to open an AED because you don't know what you're doing. It will talk to you and help you.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Learned a lot right there.
I think that's wonderful.
Oh, Ms. Goro.
I think that's wonderful, but first of all, we have to have them in our room so we can use them and not having to go from floor to floor to find out where they are. And so when you have public rooms like this, we should have those available.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney.
I'll just agree with Mr. Butita that some kind of instruction beforehand would be beneficial. I was on the golf course this past summer where one of the men in our foursome actually had a heart attack and died right there. And in that moment, it's like when everything, your adrenaline kicks up and whatnot, it would still be beneficial because what you think you might know to do, or be told to do by the machine, it would just, for me personally, the way I was feeling, it would something beforehand would have been beneficial to someone like me. That's the way I handle those things. And I was also going to mention that for those of you that don't know, our own Mr. Dornbush is and was an avid ice hockey player, and well, maybe more was than is, but he dipped his toe back into the game and got injured, and relatively badly, I'd say, and recovered and is back, and I just want to say it's good to see him back and hope he's doing better.
Very good. So maybe it's time to hang up those skates. A lot of lost productivity because of that hockey. All right, Mr. Lindmark.
That's a great point Mr. Petita brought up. Where I'm currently working, we had a person that had a heart attack, turned purple. We have a response team at both of our facilities. They used the defibrillators, brought him back to life. And our local Harlem-Roscoe Fire Department, they have classes for the employees, so we'll send 20 people, no charge. That might be something to look into, see what the fire department's willing to do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lamarck. Other new business? Nope, Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster?
Move to adjourn.
Oh, we got to do announcements and communications first for Ms. Gamow. Ms. Lori?
Thank you, Mr. Webster. The items listed below were received as correspondence in your packet.
Okay, and we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Webster, second by Mr. Thompson. Are there any board members opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.